ไหมสักเท่าไหร่ซึ่งควรจะสามารถที่จะวัดค่าได้นะคะแล้วก็กำหนดมาเป็นเรื่องของแผนที่จะทำนะคะโดยดูว่าถ้าหากว่าอยู่ในกลุ่มเดียวกันอุตสาหกรรมเดียวกันแล้วนะคะมาตรฐานเขาเป็นอย่างไรบ้างนะคะอย่างเช่นถ้าเกิดว่ามีเรื่องของการปล่อยก๊าซคาร์บอนไดออกไซด์ออกมาเราอาจจะดูว่าในบริษัทที่อยู่ในกลุ่มเดียวกันนี่นะคะเขามีปริมาณเท่าไหร่ขั้นแรกสุดก็คงจะเพียงแต่ขั้นที่จะปิดแก๊สเท่านั้นเองให้ได้ตามมาตรฐานก่อนที่จะพัฒนาไปถึงจุดที่อาจจะดีกว่านะคะสุดท้ายสุดที่คิดว่าสำคัญมากเลยก็คือการสื่อสารแล้วก็การเปิดเผยข้อมูลค่ะนะคะซึ่งเป็นเรื่องที่สำคัญที่ควรจะให้อาจจะมีการเก็บข้อมูลนะคะแล้วก็มีการเปิดเผยข้อมูลให้กับผู้มีส่วนได้เสียรวมทั้งผู้ลงทุนได้ทราบว่าบริษัทกำลังทำอะไรอยู่เพราะเรื่องเหล่านี้เนี่ยนะคะเป็นเรื่องที่อาจจะไม่ใช่ได้ผลในระยะสั้นนะคะบางครั้งบริษัทก็จะต้องเลือกดูว่าในระยะสั้นเนี่ยอาจจะต้องมีการลงทุนมีต้นทุนที่เพิ่มขึ้นแต่ในระยะยาวแล้วเนี่ยจะมีผลดีกว่านะคะเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยก็อาจจะเป็นเรื่องที่ต้องตัดสินใจนะคะว่าเรามองดูเรื่องของการเติบโตอย่างยั่งยืนในระยะยาวค่ะเพราะเข้าใจว่าเท่าที่ไปคุยหลายๆบริษัทก็อาจจะมองว่ามันจะเป็นต้นทุนไหมจะกระทบเรื่องของกำไรในระยะสั้นไหมนะคะแล้วบางทีก็มาเจอความกดดันจากนักลงทุนซึ่งอาจจะเป็นนักลงทุนที่มองผลตอบแทนหรือว่ากำไรในช่วงอาจจะเป็นอะไรคะเป็นแค่ไตรมาสหรือว่าเป็นแค่ครึ่งปี1 ปีอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะก็อาจจะทำให้เป็นแรงกดดันให้ผู้บริหารที่อาจจะมองว่าไม่ได้มองในระยะยาวแต่มองเรื่องของช็อตเทอมมากกว่านะคะซึ่งอันนี้ก็จะเป็นข้อที่เราเองก็กำลังเรียนรู้แล้วก็พยายามที่จะเข้ามาขมวดเข้ามาในเรื่องของกระบวนการตัดสินใจลงทุนของกบข.อยู่นะคะแล้วก็คงที่จะเป็นเรื่องที่ดิฉันคิดว่าเป็นเรื่องที่เราจะเรียนรู้ไปด้วยกันแล้วก็โชคดีนะคะวันนี้เนี่ยเราได้ผู้เชี่ยวชาญนะคะจากต่างประเทศนะคะจะมาเล่าให้เราฟังว่าเขาทำอย่างไรบ้างและในสุดท้ายสุดนี้นะคะดิฉันก็ขอชื่นชมตลาดทรัพย์แห่งประเทศไทยนะคะที่ริเริ่มให้มีการดำเนินการเรื่องนี้แล้วก็เป็นเหมือนกับจุดก้าวสำคัญนะคะที่ให้ตลาดหลักทรัพย์ของประเทศไทยเนี่ยก้าวเดินไปแล้วก็พัฒนาอย่างยั่งยืนนะคะซึ่งก็คงเป็นแนวโน้มนะคะของตลาดหลักทรัพย์ทั่วโลกค่ะที่กำหนดให้มีการจัดทำดัชนีในเรื่องนี้ออกมาแยกต่างหากนะคะก็เป็นความสำคัญที่เพิ่มขึ้นในโลกปัจจุบันนะคะในส่วนของดิฉันก็คิดว่าก็คงเป็นการแชร์ประสบการณ์นะคะจากประสบการณ์ของกบข.ค่ะซึ่งก็คิดว่ายังมีอีกหลายสิ่งหลายอย่างที่กบข.เองก็ยังสามารถที่จะพัฒนาต่อไปได้อีกนะคะจากวันนี้ค่ะหวังเป็นอย่างยิ่งนะคะว่าการพัฒนาโครงการของการออกดัชนีของใหม่ของตลาดหลักทรัพย์นี่นะคะจะประสบความสำเร็จแล้วกบข.เองก็เป็นนักลงทุนหนึ่งค่ะที่พร้อมที่จะให้การสนับสนุนแล้วก็ใช้ดัชนีอันนี้เนี่ยนะคะเป็นประโยชน์ในการที่จะลงทุนแล้วก็หวังผลตอบแทนในระยะยาวให้กับสมาชิกของกบข.ค่ะแล้วก็หวังเป็นอย่างยิ่งนะคะว่าหลายๆท่านถึงแม้ว่าท่านจะทำในบริษัทจดทะเบียนค่ะในส่วนหนึ่งของท่านเองก็มีเข้าใจว่าน่าจะมีกองทุนสำรองเลี้ยงชีพอยู่ด้วยนะคะก็ถือว่าเป็นส่วนหนึ่งที่สามารถที่จะสนับสนุนในเรื่องของการให้เกิดการพัฒนาการในเรื่องนี้ได้ต่อไปนะคะค่ะขอบคุณมากค่ะ
ครับขอบพระคุณคุณโสภาวดีเลิศมนัสชัยครับเลขาธิการของกองทุนบำเหน็จบำนาญข้าราชการหรือว่ากบข.นะครับซึ่งก็ถือว่าเป็นอีกหนึ่งผู้เล่นรายใหญ่นะครับในประเทศไทยที่ให้น้ำหนักหรือว่าให้ความสำคัญในเรื่องของการลงทุนในระยะยาวนะครับโดยเฉพาะในแง่ของบริษัทนะครับที่มีแนวโน้มของการเติบโตในอนาคตอย่างยั่งยืนนะครับทั้งด้านของ ESG ด้วยลำดับต่อไปนะครับผมขอเรียนเชิญผู้เชี่ยวชาญนะครับจากต่างประเทศที่จะเข้ามาพูดถึงตัว Sustainability Index อีกท่านหนึ่งนะครับผมแล้วก็ถือว่าเป็น Index ที่มีความสำคัญค่อนข้างมากนะครับ Next session we would like to invite คุณ Kathelijne Marritt Alers Regional Director from RobecoSAM AG to come up on the stage for the introduction to the Sustainability Investment คุณ Kathelijne please
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here, and thank you particularly to the Stock Exchange of Thailand for inviting me over. I had a few incidents and accidents over the weekend, so I'm not trying to be rude or look like a Thai boxer. But I decided when I was in emergency on Sunday, I asked my doctor, I said, well, the problem is I need to fly over to Thailand tomorrow. And she went like, not sure. I was like, well, I'll see if I can get dressed, if I can do the basic things and eat, then I'll go to Thailand. So here I am. I'm really happy, as said, to be able to present to you here. We heard from the stock exchange already. We heard from the government pension fund. I'm coming at it from a asset management and index angle. So I think that's a nice rounded picture. I've been asked to go into a few of the details. Why is sustainability important? Why is it relevant to investors? And then talk a little bit more about how we at RobecoSAM look at these things. And then after that, if you have questions, then I'm sure you have difficult ones, then try me and I'll see how I can deal with that. It was said already before, my name is Kathelijne Marritt. My official title is actually Regional Director, but region in my case means the world, so it's quite interesting. It's just a different take on it, it's not sustainability related. But basically, my experience is from dealing with institutional investors worldwide. I initially was looking at the European market, but over time I've also taken on the other regions as well. So here is another summary of the things I wanted to go into. So picking up some of the key questions and trying to provide you with some insights from our end. I'll start off with talking a little bit about who we are. We're RobecoSAM. We're a small investment boutique. We were founded in 1995, and the objective was to do asset management, but solely from a sustainability perspective. The company started very small, as you may imagine, and it grew over time. We're currently about 110 people. In 2007, we were acquired by Robeco, the big Dutch asset management company with lots of links to particularly the Dutch institutional market. As you may know, the pension market in the Netherlands is very developed worldwide, and in Europe they are one of the leading ones. Anything that we do is related to sustainability investing. So we have quite a lot of experience in this area. It's mainly built on our assessment, which I'll get to talk about in a bit more detail later on. And that is coming at sustainability from a positive angle. So when we started doing this, and what we still do today, is look at it positively. That is, reward those companies who do particularly well compared to their peers, and also be nice to those companies who are maybe not there yet, or maybe in the lower ranks, by not revealing any ranking and making them look bad. That means that we've got a lot of contact with these companies, both good and mediocre and not so good, and can actually engage with them. And again, engagement is one of the themes I'll get to speak about a bit more later on. So starting from the basics, what is corporate responsibility? There are so many different definitions out there. I'm sure you've heard several. You may have your own as well. From the RobecoSAM perspective, we look at corporate sustainability as the ability to look at things that are likely to affect you in the future, and therefore to make you more competitive, and also therefore for your company to become more valuable. So those to us are compelling reasons why companies should take sustainability into account, and likewise the same for investors. As I said before, all we do within our company is related to sustainability investing. So there is a broad scheme of activities ranging from private equity investments to asset management and to indices. But just talking about the overall approach, you see a nice image here. I talked about the positive approach, so that's the best in class. That's really what we focus on. We also look at certain themes. So there are particular activities or particular industries that are likely to do well in the future. Alternative energy is one of those. Then there is the engagement aspect. I already touched upon it before. I'll go into more detail later. But that is the ability to talk to the various actors in the market. And then, of course, integrating this into investment decisions. There will be, this is a health warning, there will be a few slides with quite a lot of text on, so I'm not expecting all of you, particularly those at the back, to read it from A to Z. But this is just to give you an indication. The main part of this slide is really how do you determine the materiality? So how do you go from identifying those specific criteria and analyzing them, then to quantifying them, so that means that our analysts look at it and they have a verdict on the materiality. This means, in terms of our assessment, that this is the step where the answers are translated into a score. To the validation, this process is particularly important because, again, as I said, by taking a positive approach, we give the companies a large voice. So, not surprisingly, most of us, if we would be asked to say who we are, we would paint a rather positive picture. The same goes for the companies. However, we find it very important that we also check with other stakeholders to make sure that that picture is correct. And if there are any large discrepancies between the opinion of the companies and the stakeholders, which could be unions, which could be NGOs or other stakeholders, that we need to contrast those, and we need to, again, engage in a discussion with the company to see why they see this differently and what they're doing with the feedback that they're getting. And then finally, as I said before, it comes to the application point. So that's where all these scores, all the information, all the contrasting with other various stakeholders then result in specific products. One of those could be the Dow Jones Sustainability Indices. Another one could be an equity or fixed income fund, for example. Now, what are the different possibilities? So how can you apply sustainability? I said it before, there are various different definitions, there are very different approaches, and I've tried to highlight a few here. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're mutually exclusive. People could have a mixture of several, although most people tend to be classified mainly in one of the groups. On the left-hand side, you see the importance of returns, financial returns. And then on the right-hand side, it's just the various different approaches. On this, you see that the philanthropic investments, there most people are willing to not get such a high return because they feel what they're doing is doing good, and therefore the financial return is slightly less important. On the other hand, if you look at alternative investments, so for example private equity in the green energy space, people really do want to see outperformance. They really want to pick those companies that give you an over-average return, because otherwise you would have invested your funds differently. And all the other approaches slot in somewhere in between. Now, I've asked the question before, but why is sustainability relevant and of interest to investors and companies alike? Well, in our experience, there are a variety of drivers. These are the high-level ones. So from a financial perspective, from a communication perspective, an ethical perspective, and also to demonstrate impact. So these are the four key ones. I'll go into each one in a little bit more detail. From a financial perspective, I think historically the discussion about sustainability investing has always been, oh, I don't want to do sustainability investing because I lose performance. I get much worse performance. Slowly, it seems that consensus is being reached that sustainability investing could give you at least on-par performance than standard mainstream investments, and in some cases even outperformance. What I'm showing here is a study that was done at the end of 2011 by 3 people from Harvard. And basically what they were looking at, in green, you see the HSF, so the high sustainability firms, and in black you see the low sustainability firms. The high sustainability firms are those who adopted sustainability practices very early on and did so voluntarily, whereas the low sustainability firms did so because they had to, because they didn't really like it and were generally rather late in adopting these practices. They were compared, and both in terms of financial and accounting performance, the green companies did much better. So this is, for us, again, proof that it can pay to invest sustainably, because, again, going back to what we are looking at, if you look at these companies, if you take this into consideration, you have companies who think about these things before others do, they're more ready to face the future. A good example would possibly be also if in a particular industry, say the textile industry, if companies in the textile industry were already aware of water usage and already started doing things about it a number of years ago, they are more likely to be successful today and more likely to be successful than those who haven't yet done anything about it, because in that industry, water usage is really crucial. Another angle at this, so maybe for those of you who still doubt that it really brings out performance, we feel that it also helps to make better informed decisions. If there is more information available, then why not look at it? Within our company, and this is not for the indices, I must specify, this is more on the asset management side, but we look at the ESG criteria and then also apply financial analysis. So the two are not mutually exclusive. Again, maybe to give an example of one of these things that I think highlights quite well how this could work. If you have a sales team that has a number of new recruits, if these new recruits are trained because the company has a training program and therefore are able to start operating much quicker than they would without the program, that means that the whole sales team can be much more effective, because the oldest or the existing sales team doesn't have to spend so much time explaining to the new arrivals what they have to do. And each of them can go out and reach out to customers and potential customers, thus meaning that they are likely to get more contracts, which then could result in more revenues and more profits. So that is the kind of thinking that is behind this. So it's quantifying those things that may be obvious, sometimes not, may be hard to measure, sometimes not, but are not necessarily captured by traditional financial analysis. The PRI, I'm pretty sure, is also well known within Thailand, with some of the early signatories present today. But for us, this is one way in which companies, and particularly investors, can show and use this for communication and also for reporting and monitoring. There are also some examples of key investors. You may have heard of CalPERS, the state pension fund in the US, in the state of California. And again, they do a specific report, just like some asset managers do. So there are investors who have signed up to this and who are using this to make their voice heard, as are asset management companies. And the size, obviously, of the number of assets related to this is significant. Then I come to the ethical perspective. Again, for many people, particularly those coming early into sustainability, it seems obvious to not want to invest in certain firms. So there are some typical sin sectors, alcohol, tobacco, armaments, firearms, maybe some of these. And some investors have a tendency to want to avoid these. So this is also an approach that can be taken. Another way is to say, okay, I gave the example before of a textile company not taking water risk into account. So this could be another criterion that some investors may want to use, where they say, okay, we don't want to have companies in our portfolio that are not thinking about some key drivers that affect their sector. And then finally, it could also be used in a way to display the actual performance. So here in this graph, you see on the outside of the spider web, the number 100, that is the total possible score within our assessment, 0 obviously being the least possible score. And here you see one of our asset management funds compared to all companies that we assess. And you see that particularly on the environmental policy and management system dimension, the specific product is the companies that are included in that are doing much, much better than the average companies that we look at. And this can obviously be done for anything. You could do it for a fixed income product, as I said before. You could do it for an index too. Now, coming back to, okay, so we've talked a little bit about sustainability and why it's relevant and what some of the key drivers are behind this. But then now, what do we do? How do you actually measure the sustainability of a company? Again, I want to emphasize that what we do is that we look at how a company does things, not what a company does. So we don't judge a company for the activity that it does, but we judge them how they deal with it. Likewise, companies, like people, are likely to encounter at least one, if not several, crises. It's not the fact that you're hit by a crisis that makes it necessarily bad, but it's more how you deal with that crisis situation and what you learn from it. So what we do is that we invite companies that are eligible. We tend to look at the largest companies worldwide, also the largest Thai companies, and we invite them to actively participate in our assessment. Our assessment is online, so people can submit all the information required in that online system. And then we use the summer months to rate and score that, and to do the actual checking of other stakeholders. But I'll get back to that later. We are of the opinion that the drivers are different in each and every sector. And therefore, the weight that is given to specific questions should vary from one industry to the next. And one question that may be applicable in one industry may not be applicable in another. So that is what's really driving our questionnaire. And on average, maybe for those of you not familiar with the questionnaire, it consists of about 100 to 120 questions, depending on the industry. And we've got feedback from companies that it may take quite a lot of time to fill that out. It also depends a bit on how the information is structured. So we see that companies who have been actively participating for a few years tend to be better at collecting the data because they already know what we're looking for. The other thing that I think is important, so I said, we use the media and stakeholder analysis to quality check whether what the companies say is also really what they do, so to make sure that that's in balance. But we also have our process checked ourselves by Deloitte, just to make sure that the conclusions that we come to are really the logical sequence of the work that we are doing. Now, maybe just to, I'll very briefly go through this, and I'm sure each of you can read well enough, so I don't need to go into much detail. But these are some of the key key trends that are shaping our future, and they may be more prevalent in one sector than another. And these are some of the things to look at. So, for example, an aging population results also in a scarcity of a skilled workforce. So there is more competition from companies for less people. Health costs are on the increase. Infrastructure tends to be an area that is very crucial, but often under invested in. And I'm pretty sure I don't need to go into much more detail on those. So these are just some of the things that we look at. There are others as well, but these are some of the main ones. And again, in our opinion, those companies that deal with this and have a forward-looking approach are more likely to be successful. Now, to make it, to drill down one level, I'm actually comparing two sectors here. I said before that we take very much a sector approach, and therefore I thought I'd pick two that are very different. On the one hand, you have the mining extractive industry, on the other hand, the pharmaceutical companies. And you see that in pharmaceuticals, maybe surprisingly, but the social dimension is actually the most important. So there, all the underlying questions add up to about 50% of the weight of that sector. Whereas in the mining industry, the social aspect is only about 30%. So it really depends on, as I said before, which questions are asked, and then not only, so they even both may have the same question, but then the weighting may be different because it may be more important in one industry sector than another. On the right, you see a few examples. So you see, for example, in the social dimension, you see social reporting, again, the engagement of stakeholders. In the environmental dimension, you see attention for biodiversity, for example, a climate strategy. So these are some of the examples of things that we're looking at. So this is one of those slides I warned you about before, so don't try and read them all. I mean, I'd be very impressed. But what I was trying to do is just show you that it is possible to actually measure these things. So the example I gave before of the company with a training program in place to help staff get up to speed quicker, well, those will be measured by some of these criteria. Basically, you see each of the three dimensions in the three color groups, and then on the next to them you see a number. The number highlights how often this question is asked and how many different industries a specific question is relevant. So, for example, an environmental policy or management system is relevant in 31 of 58 industries. So that's prevalent in most questionnaires. Then, looking back, I said this before, looking at stakeholder engagement, the society we live in today is a much more vocal one than it used to be. We have access to so much more information. Even for us in Europe, hearing that a factory in Bangladesh explodes is headline news, and even my neighbor who's not into sustainability at all was aware of it. So people have access to more information. There are more technologies that allow them to be in touch or to express opinions. And that means that stakeholder groups, such as specific communities, but it could also be a union or an NGO or an association or the media, then can also start highlighting where they see issues. Now, one thing that is important to mention here is that there are obviously a few companies that have a bad reputation, rightly or wrongly. I'm not here to judge on that today, and I'm not one of the analysts, so I don't have an opinion anyway. But it is a fact that for some companies or some sectors, NGOs and other stakeholders tend to make more noise. So what this is about is not the number of newspaper articles or media coverage of a specific company. But again, it's trying to put it in a bigger picture. So has the total number of news articles significantly increased? Yes, no. Are there specific fraud cases or court cases? Are there any, and if so, are there any convictions? Because any conviction could have a severe financial impact on the company. They may have to restructure, they may have to sell off some of their activities, and that is can have a significant effect on the profitability of the company. So that is what we're looking at here, just to make that clear. And then, as I said before, if you look at it from this perspective, then you obviously you reduce your risks by investing in those companies that are more open to voices that may be different from their own, and at least are considering those different voices. And that will then, in turn, build to the strength of the company, and I've mentioned it here, it strengthens the social license to operate. The society is tolerating, and in some cases even more than tolerating, that a specific company goes a specific route. So then coming back to what does that mean? Because what I'm trying to do today, and again, if you have any questions, then don't hesitate to ask. But what I'm trying to do is also show you, well, what does this mean? So this is a model.